Welcome to Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast, the place where you'll get inspired to live your life unapologetically, embrace your perfect imperfections, and do what sets your soul on fire. I'm your host, Lunden Souza. Hey, before we jump into this episode, I just want to make sure that you get all the free things possible. If you haven't already, you need to get your Self-Love and Sweat free monthly life coaching calendar. Honestly, the way to experience deep change in your life is by doing small little things over time. And so that's what you'll find in this free calendar. You can get it by going to lifelikeLondon.com/calendar. Get yours for free, and let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Aubrie Pohl back on the podcast. You've been here, I think, like 3 or 4 times. Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm excited to be back. I'm really excited for this topic, and it's fun to just converse with you in a way. You're one of my really great friends, and yeah, let's dive into it.
Yeah, I sent Aubrie over a bunch of random questions about this topic that we're going to discuss today. So that's kind of how today's episode is going to go. We're going to talk about questions that have to do with communication and confidence. Happy birthday, by the way. Me and Aubrie both just had our birthdays.
Hey, on to the next year. So
right?
Excited.
Both November birthdays. I feel like there's a lot of people that I love that were born in November. When I look at my November calendar, I'm like, oh shit, there's a lot of powerhouses that I love born in November.
So one time I heard that people with November birthdays, basically you reap the autumn harvest at this time of year. And because we're planting a lot in the spring and in the summer, we're growing the food, and then the autumn we get to reap the harvest. So people at this time of year tend to be more optimistic or cheerful because we're eating our labor that we did during the spring and summer. And I thought that was a really cool, interesting fact, because you and I talk about being focused on silver linings, like relentlessly focused on the silver lining. And maybe that's also because of the time of year, because we're eating all the fruits that we've been growing for so long, metaphorically and physically.
I love that reframe or that visual, because as a kid, I didn't like having my birthday in November because it was always cold. I wanted a summer birthday because then you could do like fun birthday party things. But now as I get older, I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that it goes like my birthday into the holidays, into like the end of the year. And it's kind of like I don't know. Like, I wanted to say period at the end of a sentence. That's not right, because I know it's not a period. Maybe it's like the ... or it's just like that bookend at the end of a full year of like, oh yeah, okay, now I get to celebrate me, celebrate gratitude, be with family, and then kind of get revved up for the next year. So anyways, cheers to November birthdays. If your birthday's in November too, send us a DM so we can celebrate you. Aubrie and I are hosting a free masterclass coming up in January, all about communicating with confidence. And if you want to sign up for that, you can do so. It's absolutely free. It's on January 11th. It'll be a 2-hour free masterclass all on this topic. lifelikeLondon.com/CWC. And so when Aubrie and I were coming up with questions or ideas for all the things to talk about today, a lot of what we're going to talk about is communicating with confidence and moments that we've sucked or been embarrassed, or just our journey of communication land. So here we are. Here we are. What question should we start with, Aubrie? You want to pick?
Oh my goodness. Well, when you brought up the one that was talking about the most awkward moment, I just thought it was such a good question, because basically the question is asking, what's the most awkward thing you've ever said in public, and how did you recover? And I was thinking about it, and I thought of a couple specific examples where I was in front of a group of people and I said something weird. But I strictly remember years ago in my must have been mid-20s. It was before I learned NLP. But I remember making the decision in my mind that being embarrassed, the only way that you can be embarrassed is if you think things are embarrassing. And so I had a little reframe switch in my mind that says, I'm tired of being embarrassed. And at that time I was going to the gym a lot. And so maybe I was embarrassed of being seen at the gym, the observation of being perceived by other people could be embarrassing. And then I made that decision in my mind. That's like, no, I will no longer be embarrassed, because I don't think things need to be embarrassing, because I have a couple moments maybe in my younger days where being embarrassed in front of a group of people would ruin my day. Like I would spin on it for days too. And I remember having that feeling and sensation. Then I was like, I don't want to be embarrassed anymore. And so now I speak in front of people all the time. And, sometimes when you're talking, you say things that you don't really intend on saying because you miss a word or you skip a word or you say something different. And if it's embarrassing, it's only embarrassing because you're embarrassed. And so if you're not embarrassed, then things can't be embarrassing. And it was a good reframe for me. So I like that first question.
Yeah, I like that one too. And you and I were talking about it a little bit before we pressed record of like, what was our most awkward thing you've ever said in public? And I said, and the way I feel about this now, but I'm actually thinking of something that I could probably share for this answer to this question that I didn't think of before. But it's like, now I'm not sure if there's anything that I could say that would make me feel awkward or embarrassed. Unless I maybe said something offensive to somebody that I really didn't mean to, that was unkind, then maybe I would feel like, awkward. Or embarrassed maybe is not the right word, but I'm just trying to think of like, yeah. And I just recently watched the movie Inside Out too, where there's embarrassment and like some of the new emotions. But one of the things that I can think of when it comes to awkward and embarrassing is when I first started making videos for Runtastic in 2012. And I would redo the videos over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I would watch the video and then like judge myself and think it was embarrassing or awkward or I said something weird. And I remember when I lived in San Clemente, I lived with this guy, Gavin, super awesome dude. We were so close, so cool. Anyways, I remember I was in the living room recording a video for Runtastic for their heart rate tracking app. So back in the day, they had this app where you could use the light on the back of your phone, and then you would put your finger on it and it would like track your heart rate through some sort of light technology on your phone. And I think I redid, like it was probably 2 sentences that I had to say. It was for like a Valentine's Day special. And I think I redid it at least 50 times. At least, right? And at some point, Gavin comes out. He's like, okay, you're done. You're done. It sounds great. You're done. Like, it just was like, he probably heard me say, he heard me. He was in the room next to it with his door shut. Poor guy. And so I remember being kind of embarrassed then. And then I just kind of remember, just working through not being embarrassed, not caring, doing it in one take. It's okay if you fumble over your words or you mess up or your hair was out of place or whatever. But I remember feeling so awkward and embarrassed when he walked out because I was like, oh my gosh, he heard me. And it's like, well, of course he heard you. Like the neighbors probably heard you. You redid it so many times. And how did I recover? I mean, that's a kind of a tough question because I don't feel, the need to recover from something like that. But I just remember feeling super awkward in that moment. And then probably if you go back and watch all those old videos, you'll be like, oh yeah, London was super awkward then too.
Well, and what did you recover? In what way did you recover from the need to do 50 retakes? Mm-hmm. Because that's a whole wormhole in itself. I remember I was making videos at home too with one of my roommates, Jilly. And then she comes out and she's like, that's so good. I'm like, yeah, I need to do it again though. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I need to record it again. So I have other takes. And she looks at me and she's like, don't record it again. Why would you do that? You just did it. You did it fine and great. And it's as if it didn't come in my brain that I could be okay with one take or just 3, and she was the best of the 3. So I had that thing in my brain too, where it's like, no, I didn't pronounce this one sentence in this one way with that one intonation that goes up and it can sound even better. But that's that fight for perfection almost in our brain. So how'd you recover from that?
How did I recover from I'm not really sure if there was a moment that I remember switching, or like you mentioned, like how you just decided you weren't going to be embarrassed anymore. I think I just had so many repetitions under my belt that maybe I did math. I was like, okay, one video times 50 takes times however many videos I needed to do per week. And then you're like, ain't nobody got time for that. And you know what I stopped doing too? I stopped watching it afterwards. I stopped. Even now, when I record podcasts, I don't go back and listen to it then before I publish it. I just, if I know there's something that needs to be edited, which is very few and far between, like if there was a disconnect or a hiccup, or I was interviewing this mom a few months ago and she had to take a pause break because her child had to go to the bathroom. So she's like, pause, I'm going to go take my kid to the bathroom. I'll be right back. So I had to like edit out some things in there. But for the most part, I just put it out there and give a little less fucks. In fact, I remember, this is interesting that this memory came to mind, Jade's ex-wife, Jill. Before I met Jade, me and my mom went to one of her retreats in Venice Beach in 2013. And I remember her and I took a picture together. And then I was like, oh, do you like it? And she goes, oh, just post it. That's my new thing. I don't even look at pictures anymore. I say, just post it. And I remember thinking, cool. And then I remember thinking like, oh, how do you do, like you just let someone post a picture that you haven't seen yet, you know? And I know that that was maybe her thing of like, okay, I'm just going to not care. And by, just letting people post, just post it, fuck it, post it. Who cares if there's something in my teeth or it wasn't my best smile or whatever. So I think that's maybe what I was feeling too, is just kind of like, oh, just record it and post it, record it and post it. And I think that's kind of how I got beyond it. I think now I remember caring, and now I remember not caring, but I don't remember that shift of like, oh, today I decided I'm no longer going to be embarrassed. But also, I had in the beginning of a lot of these videos and creation and stuff, I was battling and, or working with, let's say, working to move out very bad cystic acne. So I also was like making sure that the lighting was okay, my makeup was good, so there was a lot of like physical insecurity that I think was also coupled with a lot of like, what was I saying? Does it sound stupid? Anyways, I don't remember how I recovered, but I think I'm recovered now.
That sounds like a great recovery.
But wait. Totally. At our first Voice of Impact seminar, remember how nervous I was? And I was like, I didn't even remember what I said. I was embarrassed, I think. Maybe that was embarrassment. Maybe that was just nervous. But this second one we've done, I felt great. And I've spoken on so many stages. I just think it was a new arena for me, like a new way of engaging. And you asked me, you go, what's the difference between, you said this, I just remembered. You were like, what's the difference between you talking on a podcast and you talking in front of, and I was like, oh, people. Yeah. And isn't it wild that I can coach on communication with you, have a podcast, talk in front of people, thousands of people, even at some points in my life and career, and then me still be like, oh, but there were people there. That was scary.
Yeah. And one of my Instagram posts last week, it's scary because it's new, not because you're incapable. It's scary because it's different, not because you're incapable. And that is all full circle about this masterclass, Communicate with Confidence, because this is all putting yourself in those new arenas so that you can feel more comfortable. And I had the opportunity to make a talk about confidence last month. And my favorite blip of the whole talk is don't wait until you're confident to show up. Show up until you're confident. And I couldn't agree to that more, because the more that we put ourselves in these situations to talk in front of people or podcasts and show our skills and just share the information that we want to share, the more that we have the opportunity to step into that confidence. Because really a lot of it just stems from these insecurities that we have for no rhyme or reason, just a programming that we created when we were younger. And when we grow out of those programmings, we see, oh, it's weird. Why was I so insecure? Well, I had reasons to be insecure in the moment. And it still stems from an underlying insecurity where that is the thing to work on. And so it's easy to communicate with confidence after you move through those areas of resistance and awareness that you need to have.
Love it. What is your most awkward thing you've ever said in public? Do you know?
I don't know, like, I don't know if it's awkward. It's just stuff that you say when you're speaking in front of people. And I've had multiple times where I meant to say and talk about one thing, and I talked about something maybe inappropriate or off kiltered, and some of the room knew what I meant, some of the room didn't know what I meant, and it was just this moment of like, oh, we're not all on the same page. And to recover that from that as a speaker, the first thing is that perception is projection. So if I'm starting to get nervous and spin on that I said something quote unquote wrong or not okay, then everyone's going to read that in the room. But if I make sure that even if I say something off or off kilter or doesn't belong in that moment, if I just keep it light and breezy, other people will too. So that's what I have in my head is like light and breezy, because the more that I can perceive that within my own life, the more that I can project that, and then give other people the opportunity to project that too. Because we're all going to mess up. The more that you talk out loud, the more likely you're going to mess up because you're doing it more often. Mm-hmm. And so I would say those are the most awkward moments for sure. And then one time I was talking to someone and he's like, yeah, you're kind of awkward, but it's cute. I was like, okay, it's cute. Okay, that's fine. I can be awkward. And it was like this permission that even if it is awkward, it's cute. It's fine.
Right. And I guess I should say too, I asked ChatGPT for these questions. So when ChatGPT, she's a she in my model of the world, when she asked us these questions and I was reading through some of them too, I was kind of like, okay, well, what is awkward? Can awkward be like a good, and there's like quirkiness to awkward. And I kind of, and it's what, when things are like too polished or too perfect, then you don't like resonate as much. So I think if someone told me I was awkward but cute, I would take it as a compliment too, just like you did.
Yeah, I loved it. I was like, that sounds
good. Let's see. What's the next question? Okay, this is cool. Can you share a moment when you weren't confident but had to fake it? And what did you learn from that experience?
Oh my goodness. That's I would say the beginning, what I get sent back to in my brain is when I worked at Innovative Results, which was a gym, and I was helping run it. I was one of the lead trainers, and my boss had been stepping into moments in time where he would make like a 5-minute speech before class, just about your mind, your body, your wellness, the way that you move. And then we would go into the workout. So I was like, oh, if he's doing that, maybe I can too. So I would take those moments and I would start talking about, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And I remember being so nervous and not confident and scared. And I faked it, and it's fake it till you make it, believe it until you become it, feel it until you reel it. But I remember in my brain saying, oh my God, I'm scared to do this. Holy crap. Okay, but just do it, Aubrey. Just do it. Just do it. You can just start the workout though. You don't have to do this whole talk beforehand. No, Aubrey, you've got this. You can do it. And I would push myself to that space. Then I'd be like, all right, everyone gather around. So there's this thing of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And I started to create that space because I deep down desired to be that person. When I saw other people getting in front of a group and talking with confidence, I was like, I want to do that. I don't know why, but my body felt pulled to it. So I did that little battle in my mind. Not even a little battle. It's like the cheerleader you have inside of you that's like, go beyond what you think is comfortable. You've got this. And I still do that to this day. And I think, I think a lot of people see me communicate with a lot of confidence, and not that it's not real. I'm a very confident individual, and that's why it exudes outward. And a lot of the time, I'm also very insecure. I have a lot of programming within me that has that guidance system of not really of doubt, like self-doubt. But I'm over that. I'm not doing that anymore. And so it's me finding who I want to be with my previous programming and holding space for both, because both can be true. You can communicate with confidence and still have a programming of insecurity that's there. It's just about, can you make the decision in your mind to step forth into the person that you really want to be and challenge yourself in that way? And so that's what I do now.
Yeah. Like, which one's louder?
Yeah.
It's like not pretending like that insecure, nervous part of you isn't there, but then which side's going to like win, or which one gets to step on stage. I think that a moment when I wasn't confident and had to fake it. Okay. So for sure, the first VOI, first voice of impact, was not super confident and had to fake it. Also, side note, I had just gotten my hair done the week before and the chick jacked it up and it was bright orange. Don't lie, Aubrie. You told me it was orange. So my hair was
I was like,
orange.
it's fine, London.
That's wild though, because I don't know if I've ever had that moment where then I felt like, no, girl, your hair's orange. And then I also had an opportunity to go speak on stage for 2 full days. I was not confident. Or as I should say, I was not as confident as I am doing that now. And it was new. And I hadn't done a seminar like that ever for 2 full days. I mean, you were doing it, we did it together. So it wasn't just only me speaking the whole time. But I think the longest talk I had ever done before that was probably like an hour and a half or 2 hours. Mostly, the ones that were in person and even on Zoom, just like, a couple hours. And I'd done retreats and things like that. Anyways, that was a moment when I wasn't super confident and had to just, show up anyway.
Yeah, we just threw you in there and you shined. It was so great.
We just did it. Orange hair and all.
Orange hair and all, and it was fun. I remember just being like, this is part of the test. This is part of the experience with you and your hair too, because that you're a skilled speaker and that your hair doesn't matter in the big scheme of things, and it was still a thing that was there and present. So
it was a thing. A thing. And also, when I wasn't confident in communication too, I'll probably say most recently was when I took the director position at Brain Balance. And I talked to a lot of families, like over 60 families a month. And each of those families that I talk with, I talk for multiple hours. And in the beginning, I was just so nervous because I was like, okay, what if they ask me if I have kids and I don't have kids? That was like my biggest fear, was like that a parent was going to ask me, well, do you have kids? And that happened, by the way. A parent did ask me that in frustration and was like, well, do you have kids? Because I work with, if you guys don't know what Brain Balance is, it's we work with kids who struggle across the board, behaviorally, emotionally, socially, academically. So of course, when kids are struggling, the family struggles too, because we love our kids. And so anyways, I talk to a lot of families for long periods of time. And I just remember being so nervous that they were going to think that I didn't know what I was talking about, that, who could this girl be that doesn't even have kids that's telling me that my kid needs that whatever program. So that was probably a more recent time. But I just remember, like exactly what you said, a couple, question or last question or whenever you said it in the beginning of like, you aren't confident, but then you keep doing it until you are confident. Like you work into it. And so I just told myself that, okay, you've had previous experiences where you felt awkward and you did it 50 times to make a short little video. And now there's real people. So there's no like do-overs, and that's okay. And just like, so that was a moment that I felt, not that confident. When I think of like speaking and communicating and, listening and all the stuff that comes with that. So I think that was probably the least confident I felt recently.
Yeah, it's all coming back to the skill sets too, because you're so confident doing podcasts. And to me, podcasts are way different. They're actually more of a skill set that I'm developing, because talking in front of people, you've got the feedback, you've got the receptivity of them laughing to your jokes or the moments of humor, and you have it in the moment, or they even make questions with their face when you need to change it to something that makes even more sense. And so you have that, and in podcasts you don't. I'm glad right now we have it, because we're dueling this podcast, and we have that opportunity to get the feedback from one another. But other than that, you're talking into a microphone, so you're learning a lot of new different skill sets. I like this next question.
What is it?
What's one communication habit you've changed that has had the biggest impact on your relationships or career?
I love that you picked that, because when I was looking at the list, that's what I was in my head. I was thinking, oh, I hope that's the next question.
That's a good one.
You read my mind.
What's
one communication habit you've changed that has the biggest oh gosh, so many. I don't even know if I not giving advice, I think, has been the biggest one. Like holding back the advice tongue of like, you should do this. I remember sitting when when was this? This was not trying to think if this was when I moved back for COVID. It doesn't matter either way. I was in LA hanging out with my friend Allie and our friend Danielle, and we were all eating food somewhere together, like at this like deli. I'm just imagining us like we're all sitting somewhere. And I remember them talking about how they don't make enough money at their job and I was like, okay, well, when's the last time you asked for a raise? And they were like, never. And I was like, what do you mean? You're supposed to ask for a raise like every 6 months. Are you joking? You know, that's literally probably how it sounds. And I remember seeing their face of like, damn, girl, you know? And so that's the London that I've graciously laid to rest, is just like, let people just vent and share when they want to. If they want your advice, they'll probably ask for it, right? Like, what would you do? Or what do you think? Or, you know, if you were me, like, just there's so many ways that people know how to ask for feedback if they want it, that I just don't have to jump out and give the advice. Even in NLP and in coaching, the best advice oftentimes comes in the form of a question. So just like asking, you know, a question that helps someone, you know, discover on their own and figure out the answer on their own. So I think that one's been a huge. I remember when I was dating Andreas as well, he has type 1 diabetes. And yeah, I just would oftentimes give him so much input, unsolicited advice on like what he should or shouldn't be eating, or how he should or shouldn't be living his life. And oh, that was probably the worst. Him and I are such great friends now. I'll have to ask him how annoying he thought I was then. But I remember when I started to just like not give that advice anymore. And then at some point, him and I lived together, and we just like, he saw me like day in and day out. Like I wake up, I do this, you know, and it's like, and I remember at one point he was like, he wasn't the right word in English. The word that he was looking for was consistent, but he was like, I remember he goes, you're very consequent. And I was like, consequent. And then anyways, we figured out that the word was not consequent, but consistent. And then he started being like, okay, I want some of that. Like if I would take my apple cider vinegar shot or my supplements or go for a walk, and even if it was snowing or rain or whatever, you know? And so I just realized, like, just stop telling people what you think they should do and just do yourself. And then if they want to catch on to something, great. And in the midst of also not giving people advice, I'm also learning from other people too. Like I'm not the glory, you know, thing to look at in the room all the time. It's not just like, I don't have it all figured out. I don't know why for some reason I thought that. So yeah, that changed my everything, is like just is giving advice. I think unless someone asks for it, or yeah, just not wanting to jump to tell you what I think, you know?
Yeah. I really resonate with that when I go home to see my parents and my sister. And I remember years ago when I first got into health and fitness, like, you know, almost 20 years ago, I would go home and I would shove things in their faces. And, you know, I'd literally buy organic spinach and be like, this is what we're going to eat and whatever. And they didn't have that at that point. And I remember still, I would go home and be like, you should probably get a squatty potty because it allow your feet to lift up, and it, you know, moves your sacral center in a different position so that you can poop easier. And it was like, no. And I come home for this holiday and there's a squatty potty. So it always takes a few years. But eventually, if I'm just being me, that's a lot easier. And they don't feel like I'm shoving ideas down their throat. And I learned that. And I love that with NLP, is just having that confidence to be able to ask really good questions, because that just helps with communication in general and getting to know people better and getting to know what's happening on the inside of their model of the world.
Mm-hmm. What's yours?
I was thinking about this, and I want to put it in regards to just like opening up to other people, to letting them know what you're experiencing or letting them know what I'm experiencing. And I think that was the biggest marker, was giving myself permission to just share authentically and be really real with people. But that was also very challenging. And now I'm experiencing that in some of the dating scene, because you really get to be direct. And sometimes being direct is confronting your own insecurities, and also just fear of rejection, fear of the response that you're going to get. And you have to really come from a place of wholeness to be able to present information outward. But now I'm working on it. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. So I went on an online dating event 2 nights ago. Because I was like, all of a sudden this came across my
I
algorithm.
don't know this information yet.
I haven't told you it yet. And so it was an online dating event through Eventbrite. And I was like, fuck it. Let me just see what
On
happens.
Zoom?
No, it was just through like their website. And
Okay.
so literally it's like, here's this guy coming from this location. And I had set it to Arizona because I'm going to Arizona lately. I'm like, that'd be cool if I could meet somebody out there. And it brought up people, like actual men, onto the online dating, and it was speed dating. So you get 8 minutes. And it was very nerve wracking for me, but it was like, the reason that I did it was, maybe I'll meet someone, most likely no, because these men were like in their late 40s. But it was fun because I would be like, how old are you? And this one guy was like, oh, I'm 45. And I was like, oh, okay. And we talked a little bit more. And then I was like, to be honest, that's a little above my age bracket for dating. So I'm going to, wish you the best luck. But that kind of communication, oh my gosh, is so new to me. And being that direct with like what I'm feeling and what's present in my reality towards a romantic kind of scene and scenario. So it was a really good time for me to practice those skill sets. So that's what I'm working on lately, is how to be more direct, but also set the boundaries that I need to set.
I love that. Were you in like breakout rooms for 8 minutes? Is that like, and you'd have one-on-one with the person for 8 minutes is actually kind of a long time.
Yeah, it was kind of a long time. You could always end it early if you feel like it. So it gives you the opportunity to cancel. Nobody gets each other's number or information unless you want to after the call. It was a pretty cool setup, given for what it was, and a really good opportunity to practice some good old direct
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. Instead of making up a story about something like, oh, I didn't like them, or that was awkward, or they were like, it's like, no, they're just like, they might be great, but like age wise, that's not where I'm at. And
Yeah. Or
just like
being
that
like,
was
oh,
it.
my internet's weird right now. I can't understand this. Hang up and pretend that the internet just got weird or something because I didn't want to,
Did you
say this.
think about doing that?
No, well, I don't, maybe.
Well, that sounded very specific.
Oh, the internet's really spotty. If it hangs up right now, it's weird.
Like, what? I can't hear you.
But sometimes we'll do that, like because we're scared of communication. So we'll make up some silly white lie in order to not just
Yes.
directly communicate. And
1,000%.
in the dating scenario or in the past, experiencing ghosting or being too afraid to communicate myself and therefore ghosting has been something I've been involved in. And so now I'm trying to make that line within myself of like, no, you can't ghost either. If you don't like ghosting, you can't ghost either, Aubrey.
Yeah. No internet failure ghosting happening here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get the text or the message. No, it's like, you got to be straight up. So that's been fun.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, I'm so excited to hear more about this.
I know, because
That's
I
super
communicate with
interesting.
confidence so much in every aspect of my life, especially when I'm speaking and teaching NLP. And then all of a sudden, in the dating world, I become like an insecure little girl. And I just am working on all of those insecurities. And it's been fun.
That was going to be a question I take off the script or off the random list that we had was like, okay, you're such a great communicator. Where do you get most nervous to communicate? So dating wise, that's where you feel most nervous.
I can talk to a room of 300 people and be so confident. I can talk to a group of people. And it's interesting because a lot of people have a fear of public speaking, but I don't. I don't have a fear of public speaking. The more the merrier. That's great. My fear is one-on-one communication because that's way more vulnerable in my model of the world. I'm
Mm-hmm.
seen way deeper and way more known in one-on-one scenarios than in one versus many.
Yeah, I remember when we had, what did we have at my house? And you were here visiting.
Dinner on purpose?
No, because you weren't here for
Voice of
dinner.
impact? Maybe I
When
just need to hang
no,
out.
when we did the walking meditation, remember?
Yeah.
And you were visiting, and I invited random, not even random, but just people I had met throughout the months of being here in Utah. And then we all came in and were like chatting afterwards. And you afterwards, you were like, did you notice how I was like in the corner nervous? And I was like, oh no, I didn't actually. Like we were all just, and you were like, oh, but you didn't real. And I was like, no, not because I wasn't paying attention to you. I just felt like you were part of, but I love that you shared that because that was like that moment where you're probably like in your own head or whatever in the corner thinking, oh, I need to engage or not or whatever. But I remember when you shared that with me afterwards, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get to know more of you, which is great. Because
Yeah,
you
one of my friends.
rush it in front of people. Like I remember the first time taking NLP, or actually not even the first time taking your NLP course, but when you spoke at the retreat in Costa Rica, I was like mesmerized. I was like, oh shit, I could watch this girl talk for days and hours. And I have, because I've taken all your certification courses and everything, and you're just so captivating. But I think it's great to share, because just because you're great on stage with a bunch of people doesn't mean that you feel good one-on-one. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's so interesting too, because then in those moments, I'm like, okay, what is real? And then what is only in my head? If I thought I was being awkward in the corner and then you said I wasn't, I was like, did I just make that up in my brain? Was I being completely normal? Like, did people not think that I was being, and it was just in my head stuff? And I think that comes back to, the idea of masking, or the roles that we try to play in front of scenarios. And so I was just maybe feeling some underlying pressure that I needed to be a certain way. And then I was just being naturally me, and I perceived it as being awkward or different when it was actually just fine. No, who knows?
Right? Yeah, I remember that part.
Yeah. I think
Um,
it's so interesting too when I have those moments, and I relate to people that have social anxiety, because I used to identify as somebody with social anxiety. And then I was talking to my friend Gino, and I just remember this quote. He was like, Aubrey, they're just human. And I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, but they're people. He's like, yeah, but they're just like you. Like, nobody knows what we're doing. And it was such a release into this relaxation that I can have with people. And so now I try to lead with that kind of emotional center of it. There is no pressure to be a certain way when you're with other people. And actually, if you're authentically yourself, you're going to feel better too.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You were talking about that. I was thinking too about how when I moved to Austria and was always on camera and on stage, there were times where I felt like being like coming off the stage was hard, and really having those authentic, true one-on-one conversations, really letting people know who I am. And then I think that's why people were like, oh my gosh, Lunden, are you just like always motivated and always happy and always positive and all? Because I don't think I knew how to and I think I'm still discovering it too. I don't think I knew how to be all parts of me, because
Mm-hmm.
we all have, not just like the happy, good on stage, confident, communicate with confident parts. There's also all the other parts. And I think that when it came time to, just step off the stage and then be one-on-one or in small groups, there were parts that so badly wanted to be seen, but I didn't know how to let them be seen. Because in my head, I was thinking like, oh, well, if you're not, if you're these things, then you're not these other things. And it's like, actually, you can just be all of the things and just kind of express what feels most right in the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And you can be the speaker that goes on front of the stage in front of 1,100 people in Austria doing an entire workout party with this high energy. And you can be the person that's just more grounded and going through emotional experiences. And if you're having a sad day, you can be having a sad day. And it's almost interesting when we get put on stages, because it's as if we have this role that we put forth. It's a little bit of acting, but to be honest, for me, it's like just being the speaker that you want to be. Like, even if I'm having a shitty day, if I'm talking in front of an audience, I'm not going to be so solemn as I would be if I'm by myself. Like, I'm going to use that opportunity to turn it off and be the speaker that I want to be. And so maybe in this way, before, we think that we have this perception to uphold because of who we are in front of people on stage. And then we realize that that's just a veil within itself. And then we step forward out of that, and we can be more real and raw in the more intimate settings with people one-on-one, or just a couple people.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, the conversations, or the times for communication that get me a little bit like nervous and sweaty, are conversations with people that we've known each other for a while, or at least known each other through different versions of ourselves. And I think I can think of like two people in particular. And we both still want to be in each other's lives, and we both know that we are evolving in new ways. And so meeting those old people in a new frame of where I am now and where they're at now. Sometimes I get a little like awkward and uncomfortable in those situations of like, we both know we don't want to talk about the things we used to talk about, but how do we get into the flow of talking about these like new ways we want to go? And so oftentimes in those like awkward, that's why I love Dinner on Purpose and the card set that we created. I also love Googling like questions to deepen conversations. I mean, that's what we're doing now is just coming up with a bunch of questions. So in those scenarios with those particular people, I usually end up like Googling questions or asking random questions, or like I get a little nervous, like just going into conversation sometimes with people I don't know. Does that make sense? Like I've known them for a
Yeah.
long time. And
Yes, because there's a belief that making friends as an adult is hard. There's this societal belief. I've heard, my parents say it. I've heard a lot of my friends say it, that making friends as an adult is hard. So there's this thing that we get to do now and hold space for the moments where that belief could be present, because it is interesting to make friends and be like, hi, I like you. Do you want to be friends? Do you want to hang out with me? Should we do this thing? And then cultivate conversation from there. So growing the relationship. And then how you also mentioned the friendships that we've had for years. And when we change so much as an individual, sometimes when we go back to those people we haven't seen in a good amount of time, we are different, like fundamentally different. And so how do we present ourselves while also communicating that we're different than we used to be? And there's a lot of these underlying meta communications that can happen. I really enjoy the belief system that my friends, this one group of friends that I have, in like 2017, we made this decision of like, every time you talk to somebody, allow them to be who they are in that moment. And so even if you haven't seen somebody for a year, remember who they are, and also don't hold them to that, who they used to be, because they could have made so many changes in the last year. So it was just kind of like, okay, who are you today, Lunden? Like, I'm so grateful to be friends with you for this long now. And today you could be an entirely different person. So now I'm holding space to get to know Lunden as you are in this moment.
totally. And you're not one of the people I was thinking of, because I feel like whatever version I am in that day is for some reason I don't get nervous or sweaty or uncomfortable around that. And then I don't think making friends as an adult is hard, because I've made a lot of friends. But it's like they only know this version of me, which feels very good and authentic, And then I think sometimes when I'm around people being this version of me that have known me, and I don't know, sometimes I get a little bit like, I don't know, like, it's super wild. I don't know. I don't even know how to fully describe what that feeling is, but it's like, it's almost like, wait, am I being true to myself now, or am I being the version before? Is there a both and that can kind of dance together, because I have known this person since I was 10 years old? You know what I mean? There's a little bit of like, yeah, it is kind of making friends. It's like being on the playground again, and like, but I don't feel that with new people that I just, met or whatever. But the people that have been on the journey of Lunden, I feel that way with. Sometimes there's a couple people that I can think of where I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Or I remember like when I first started going to retreats, and ones that I would say are more spiritual and internally inquisitive in nature, and just about, just those types of retreats. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm not deep enough. I don't know. I remember one time being at a retreat in Scotland, and one of the guys started asking people just like, oh yeah, what's your favorite mantra? Like, just like how, let's say everyday people might be like, oh, what's your favorite baseball team? And I remember like we were hiking, and I like took a few steps. I remember thinking, I don't know what my favorite is, and I don't want him to ask me, and I don't feel like deep enough, or, but I knew I wanted to be there. I knew I was craving growth. I knew I was craving something different. So now when I'm in those moments, I often think of that moment of like, oh yeah, but remember when you first started going to retreats and you were by yourself and you didn't know anyone and you knew you wanted to dive deeper into who the essence of you and your spirituality and just healing through different plant medicines and different things that your friends and your family for sure weren't doing. And, but that's also sometimes like in business or entrepreneurship or in other groups of leaders, I feel that way too, where I get a little nervous where I'm like, I don't know if I'm good enough to be here. But I think that's the whole point. I think that you have to put yourself in those arenas where you're like scared and you do it anyway, or you're nervous and you feel small, but you're going to show up confident anyways. So those are some arenas where I feel a little bit, that doesn't mean I'm not going to go there. It doesn't mean I'm not going to have the conversation or I'm not going to go to that room just because I'm not confident, but just for the sake of being like super real and honest in now of what I'm thinking of, I'm like, oh yeah, those are still some moments that kind of like, little nervous.
Yeah. And you put yourself in those moments in life too. You, what's that saying about putting on the bigger shoes until you grow into them kind of way of thinking, say yes now, figure out later. And it's this underlying character and personality trait that we have that to be able to step into those moments. The other quote, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Like you get to put yourself in rooms where people are smarter, bigger, faster, stronger, whatever it is, because then you get to up level and you get to grow and you put yourself in those places to be able to make that change happen. And it can be a little unnerving, like figuring out your favorite mantra, you got to feel into all the different mantras. And if you don't know that many mantras, or you don't know, if you want to do one that's like the Sanskrit language, you don't know the Sanskrit and things like that, can be nerve-wracking. And then you realize that, oh, again, that's just insecurities coming up and you can just say anything and it's all going to be okay. There's no wrong answers.
And no one like remembers what you said, like that. I think that's just something we can kind of like a topic we can sort of land the plane with is like, no, everyone's so in their own world, own processing, filters, their model that like I have friends and even clients who are, to use the word that you introduced me to that I love, that are ruminating in like something that they said years ago that they're still like embarrassed about or nervous. It's like nobody remembers what you said. Like you guys listening to this podcast now, once it's over, like you might remember a few things that stood out to you or spoke to you, but you're not going to remember like, oh, Lunden said too many times, or that was weird that she shared that about that one. Like nobody cares. Like they just don't.
So freeing too. And that is full circle to communicate with confidence. It's the ability, and it's like becoming who you want to be and who you are is not necessarily about becoming. It's also about unbecoming who you aren't and shedding the layers and the overthinkers, people pleasers, perfectionism. A lot of that often involves shedding the perception that you think you need to be, and then letting go of that to just be what's already there and who you truly are. And that from that space can come a lot of the confidence and ability to speak without just being hard on yourself or, self-sabotaging yourself in any way. It's really a let go to come into the confidence that you have within.
Mm-hmm. There's a paper that I wrote on my fridge and it says, nobody cares, you're going to die, it's time. And that's also what it makes me think of, because it's like, nobody cares, or nobody's making it out of this world alive. It's time to communicate. It's time to share. It's time to mess up. It's time to go to the online speed dating events. It's time to go to the seminar. It's time to go to the master class. It's time to be nervous and do it anyway. It's time to, have that hard conversation and mess up and do it over. It's like, it's just time to do all the things that freak you out and you're scared and make you nervous. And, public speaking and even just communicating and having those hard conversations and communicating in front of people is like a bigger, the top fear next to dying. So it's like, might as well put them, together and be like, oh yeah, you're not going to make it out of here alive. It's time to just show up and be in front of people. But that's why I'm so passionate about communication and public speaking and the coaching that you and I do, is because I know it's one of the top fears. And I just think being scared and doing it anyway you get so much cool stuff out of life, I think.
Mhm. Yeah. And the fear of being seen is real for people too. The fear
Mhm.
of being exposed to the world. And a lot of it can stem from having, guidance, parental guardian, or people that are guardians that watch after us that didn't receive our feelings, didn't receive who we were. And so we're afraid to show ourselves now. And all of that is just a bunch of hooey. Like, you can throw all of that out and you can let yourself be seen, heard, known, right? To be loved is to be known by people, and you get to let people know who you are. And so to be able to hold a masterclass or a safe space so that people can learn the skill sets of releasing who you aren't and who you're not meant to be, so that you can be who you are confidently and communicate with that confidence. I feel so grateful to be on this journey, to have that information to present to people, and also to have the experience of it to get to the space that I'm in, to be able to share.
Yeah. You're the best. I love talking with you. I could talk to you for hours, and I get to.
We get
I get to all the time. Thank you for being here and for sharing and for all the things, and for you guys listening. We want to see your beautiful face on camera with us at our Communicate with Confidence Masterclass on January 11th. I'll put the link in the description wherever you're watching this video clip or listening to this audio. You'll see that link, but it's lifelikeLondon.com/CWC, Communicate with Confidence, CWC. And you can sign up there. It's absolutely free. You'll have a 2-hour seminar or a 2-hour masterclass to help you unlock some really important keys to expressing yourself, not only on stage in front of people, public speaking. Yes, that's part of it, and it's huge, and we love that piece, but then also off stage, right? Interpersonally, those one-on-one conversations with our family, with our partners, with our friends, those really powerful, potent, like nitty-gritty conversations that we get to have on the day-to-day. And then, of course, if you want to speak and be on stage and share your story and just start to unleash more of that, you're going to get all of that in our masterclass. So I'm excited to host that with you.
Yes, your words are the gateway to your needs being met. So the more that we can have this authentic, free-flowing channel of energy from our throat, that's our manifestation point as well, is coming out of our throat and expressing and externalizing our inner reality to the people around us, or just to our reality. It's so fun, and this is going to be a great masterclass. So come join us so we can have this time to hang out, be free, and speak freely, because we all deserve that.
Yeah,
we all need that.
We do. Feels good. Love you, Obs. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you.
Love you too. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you guys for listening. See you at the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, or were inspired by it, or something resonated with you, do me a favor and share this episode with a friend, someone that you think might enjoy this episode as well. That's the ultimate compliment and the best way to make this podcast ripple out into the world of others. And also, you can leave us a review up to 5 stars wherever you're listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you at the next episode. I appreciate you.